So I'm Alex Palanak. I'm the RefugEAP Network convener. And I'm joined today by my colleague Julie, who's going to be letting people in and monitoring any tech issues. So if this is your first RefugEAP Network event, I'll just briefly outline what the RefugEAP Network is. It's a network largely made up of English for academic purposes practitioners and researchers, which aims to facilitate the development and implementation of pathway to higher education English language provision for refugee background students, with a particular focus on academic English. Until now, much of the EAP focus of UK universities has been on supporting displaced students who are physically based in the UK through things like free informal classes, fee-waived places on pre-sessional programmes, and discrete provision like the Olive programme or the RefugEAP programme. However, with the widespread move to online EAP provision during the COVID era, this has given many practitioners and institutions the tools and expertise to expand their EAP offers to students based outside the UK. In parallel to this, the UNHCR is calling for universities in the global north to support more displaced people who are currently situated in the global south. Against this backdrop, we have the current situation in Gaza, a live-streamed genocide, part of which has involved scholasticide, which is the deliberate and systematic targeting and destruction of a people's educational institutions, academics, students, and the means of knowledge production by a colonial entity. To date, all Gazan universities have either been completely destroyed or severely damaged, and Gaza's 88,000 students have had their education severely disrupted. Despite this destruction and the unthinkable suffering and hardship which they have faced over the past 13 months of genocide, many of Gaza's students are still determined to continue their studies. And the universities themselves, though their buildings may have been largely reduced to rubble, have come together in a united call to deliver the following message. We built these universities from tents, and from tents, with the support of our friends, we will rebuild them once again. Despite the seemingly overwhelming obstacles, Gazan students and academics are determined not to allow their universities and their education to be another casualty of the genocide. And it is in a spirit of solidarity with this call that we proceed with this webinar today. We have 4 amazing speakers joining us today. First, we will hear from Ibrahim Aldalis, a civil engineer from Gaza, who attended and successfully completed an online pre-sessional programme this summer via the University of Birmingham, and wrote about this very eloquently in a recent blog post on the RefugEAP Network website. We will then hear from Alison Tinker, who is an EAP Teaching Fellow from the University of Birmingham, about the practicalities of supporting Ibrahim from a teaching and coordination perspective. We will then have a chance for questions for Ibrahim and Alison before moving on to our next speakers. We will then zoom out to hear the insights of 2 researchers in the area of distance learning in crisis contexts. The first is Yvonne Fraser, who's an EAP tutor and programme coordinator, whose recent chapter on EAP for students in fragile environments sheds further light on this topic from an EAP angle. The last speaker will be Professor Saida Affouneh at An-Najah National University, Palestine, an expert in this field who has devised guidelines for developing and adapting online programmes for students currently in Gaza. We will then finish with time for further questions and discussion. So now it's my great pleasure to hand over to Ibrahim, who is joining us from Gaza today, and we will keep our fingers crossed that the internet connection holds out for him. So welcome, Ibrahim, and we're handing over to you now. Have we lost Ibrahim? I think his internet connection may well have gone.
I think, Alex, he's just coming back in, I think.
Okay. Okay. Did somebody receive a message from him to say that he's just coming back in? Okay.
He was just in the waiting room.
Aha, okay. So if we have trouble, oh, there he is. Okay, let's just hang on a second. Let's just make him co-host again so that he's able to unmute. Okay, Ibrahim, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
He is not connected to the audio yet.
Oh, he hasn't. Okay. Okay, let's give him a few more seconds. And if not, we can always start with Alison first.
he is not.
Oh, there he is. Hi, Ibrahim.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just lost the connection.
Okay, you just missed your introduction. I just gave you a fantastic introduction.
I will watch the recording.
Yeah, good plan. Okay, feel free to make a start, Ibrahim.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Alex, and thank you for everyone. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Ibrahim Aldalis, and I am very glad to share my journey with you as a refugee background and internally displaced student from Gaza who had the privilege to benefit from the refugee initiative. This remarkable initiative enabled me to complete a pre-sessional course at the University of Birmingham, an accomplishment that has opened new doors in my academic journey. To give you a bit of background, in May 2023, I received the COPT scholarship from Queen's University Belfast. This scholarship is highly competitive, awarded to only one student from Palestine each year, including Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. While I was thrilled to receive this opportunity, I also knew there was an English language requirement I needed to fulfill to secure my place. However, meeting this requirement presented significant challenge. As some of you may know, in Gaza, traditional English proficiency exams like IELTS and TOEFL are not readily accessible, especially with the ongoing crisis and testing centers closed indefinitely. While I tried to meet the requirement by taking an alternative exam, like Kaplan online exam, the conditions in Gaza made it extremely difficult to get a valid score because they have some restrictions and limitations about the environment of the exam. The conditions in Gaza made it extremely difficult to meet this requirements and this limitations. I faced issues like unstable internet and a noisy environment, challenges that made it almost impossible to complete the test effectively. Despite my efforts, at the point I realized I needed a more flexible solution that would work within the challenging conditions I faced. It was then that I learned about RefugEAP initiative. The initiative offers displaced students the opportunity to take a pre-sessional for academic purposes course, providing a pathway even in conflict zones like Gaza. The pre-sessional course became best and only option because it the academic English preparation did while foundation accommodated the limitations I was facing. I was grateful to find out that Queen's University was understanding enough to accept my decision
Okay, it looks like his internet has cut out. Okay, let's give him a minute to see if he can get back in again. I think maybe when he rejoins, it might help if we switch our cameras off. That might help his connectivity a bit. In the meantime, while we're waiting for him to come back, if anyone hasn't yet introduced themselves in the chat, then feel free to do that. I think Alison, I think we'll give him a couple of minutes to see if he's able to get back in. And if not, then maybe we can make a start on your presentation, and we can always come back to Ibrahim afterwards once he's connected again.
Alex, I'm quite happy if I'm doing mine and my part, and Ibrahim comes back in, I can pause and let him take advantage of the connection when he gets it. And
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, shall we just go with that plan then? Maybe we should just start your presentation then, Alison, and yeah, see if Ibrahim's able to get back in. And I guess this very kind of clearly demonstrates some of the challenges of trying to support students in Gaza with online education.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm quite happy. Could you give me a shout if Ibrahim comes back? Can you give me a shout and I'll step back and let him take advantage of connectivity when he has it? Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. I think I've done it wrong again.
It's okay, Alison. We can see your screen, but we can just see the edit view. Oh, yeah, that's fine now.
That's
Perfect.
better, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, my name's Alison. I'm a tutor and coordinator at the Birmingham International Academy, which is part of the University of Birmingham. I'm also the co-chair of the University Sanctuary Committee at Birmingham, and then I have another job, which is hotel outreach coordinator for asylum seekers and refugees in Birmingham. So that sometimes I feel like this is all too much, but there are moments when all three roles come together, and it's a huge pleasure. And one of those moments was this summer when we had Ibrahim with us. But today, yeah, I've very much got my coordinator hat on today. So I wanted to talk you through a little bit about what we were able to do to facilitate Ibrahim being with us. And the PowerPoint won't move. Okay. All right. Sorry. Ibrahim's just coming back in, so shall I pause here?
I think carry on for now, Alison.
Shall I carry on for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to look at this at three aspects, really, three perspectives that we needed to consider when we saw that Alex had advertised for pre-sessional places for students in Gaza. I'm very lucky. The BIA has a very cooperative, very willing management. So they were immediately on board. But there were some things that we had to think about. And I'm looking at them today from the point of view of the administrative tweaks that we needed to make. Some of the things we put in place for the coursework and also the assessments. So starting with the administration, we are a British Council accredited course, which means we have a limit on our class size. And this means that if we have a class, for example, of 15 students and we offer a place to one more, that can result actually in having two half full classes, which would mean employing another teacher with the recruitment and the salary considerations of that. So asking my department to give free places to people, I think that is a concern, but The BIA knows their recruitment well enough, they know their student intake well enough that they were willing to give 2 places. Hopefully after the success of this year, we can expand that. But for this year, the first time, they were very willing to offer 2 places. And as Ibrahim mentioned, we do have an IELTS score requirement for people to enter our programs. And Ibrahim did not have an IELTS score and was not going to be able to get one. And the management were very willing to just, in these circumstances, just waive that requirement, which was lucky and yeah, good for all of us. Another thing we had to consider is that the pre-sessional courses that we offer, they're not standalone courses. We can't offer them as a one-off course to students. They come as part of a package. It's probably the same in most UK universities. All our students have a UG or a PG offer for a course. What's happened is they probably don't have the English language requirements to enter that course. And so the pre-sessional course is sort of tagged on it is a pre-sessional course. And if students finish that successfully, they progress straight into the course that they actually want to study. We don't usually offer this, as I said, as a standalone course. In this case with Ibrahim, he did have the offer of a PG course. It just wasn't at the University of Birmingham, but we were able to coordinate with Queen's and they would accept our pre-sessional course scores. And so we were able to go ahead. I think, to be honest, that we would have gone ahead anyway, just in these circumstances. But normally it's not a standalone course that we can just offer to people. And then I think that's about it. There were various other little minor administration tweaks that needed to be made, but there was nothing there that was very complicated. We do ask students to have, for online courses, to have a laptop, a decent Wi-Fi connection, a quiet place to study. Obviously, this was not possible for Ibrahim. Again, that condition was waived. And apart from that, really not very much admin work went into this. And I think this is really interesting and something that we could highlight if you're asking your university to join in initiatives like this, that it's really not a big thing. Apart from the ethical and moral concerns, I mean, what's in it for me from the point of view of the university is really that we are sharing what we have. We weren't creating anything that we weren't already doing. So we weren't having to recruit teachers or write materials or put training in place. It's something that we already had, and we just opened that up a little bit wider. And I think that's a kind of good baseline to start with any sanctuary initiatives that we're doing with universities. If it's not something that you're creating, but something that you're sharing, it's actually a lot easier to convince people and to get them on board. I think also if you're a University of Sanctuary or applying for University of Sanctuary status, this is exactly the sort of thing that ticks all the boxes. So it's another win for the university. And I think also we promoted it as the idea that our courses are run for international students. This was a huge opportunity for our other international students to meet somebody and to expand their education. So really very little admin work went into it, and there's a lot of wins for the university, to be honest. During the course, there was a little bit more work, well, not work, but more considerations. We had to be aware, as we've seen, that if you have a not very stable connection to Wi-Fi, that can cause problems with Ibrahim coming in and out of classes and missing some of the materials. But all of our materials are online, they are on Canvas, and we advised Ibrahim at the beginning, download everything so that anything he missed, he was able to study independently. And we're also very lucky at our pre-sessional courses in the BIA. All of our students are in contact actually with 3 tutors. So there'll be one tutor for the module of reading and writing, another tutor for the module of speaking and listening, and a 3rd tutor who works for the language support team. And the language support team are there to support any student who is having any sort of difficulty and needs a little bit of extra one-to-one time or workshops. And so Ibrahim's one language support tutor was able to coordinate with the teachers. Anything that Ibrahim missed, they were able to have a one-to-one or invite him to a workshop and make sure that he wasn't falling behind in the materials. So that's one consideration, that I think you do need to support students and make sure that they are able to keep up. And the teaching staff that we had were absolutely wonderful. We hit the jackpot with them. They weren't handpicked, but if they had have been, we couldn't have been more lucky. We had 3 exceptional tutors there. 2 of them had already completed the University of Leicester's trauma-informed workshop. I think a lot of EAP tutors come from an ESOL background, so they were used to working with refugees and asylum seekers. But we certainly got the three we could possibly have hoped for with the 3 that we had. Incredibly empathetic, very, very invested in making sure that Ibrahim did the very best that we could manage. And also, if you have a team of teachers, make sure that they can coordinate together. And these 3 did a wonderful job of coordinating. I think at the same time, you need to be aware of looking after those teaching staff. I wouldn't say, I think perhaps vicarious trauma is perhaps not the term to use here, but it certainly does make an impact when you care about your students and you're involved with your students. It does have an emotional impact to see somebody working so hard and with such dedication and so obviously talented, as Ibrahim is, living in such difficult circumstances. Anyone who cares would find that a little bit of an emotional toll. And so we put in place, or we made sure that teachers were aware of options for counselling with the university wellbeing department. And also there's a counselling offered by Maximus, which is run by the Department of Health, of Work and Pensions, I think. Anybody who's in full-time employment can access that and have 6 months worth of counselling. So we made sure that our tutors were very aware that there was support for them if they felt that they needed it. And we had regular meetings, regular catch-ups to make sure we were all okay, and not feeling too impacted. And also, of course, well-being for Ibrahim. Although I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know how much counselling would help for people that are having to live in such disgraceful circumstances, but it was there if it could have been of any help. And I also wanted the wellbeing department on board in case extenuating circumstances or RAPs could be put in place. We didn't need them. We don't have them actually for the pre-sessional course. It's such a short course that we rely on tutors' discretion if they want to extend deadlines and things. But I thought it was good for Ibrahim to be in contact with the wellbeing department. And the other consideration is classmates. Ibrahim was in a class of 16 or 15 or 16 other students, and we needed to be sure that they were on board. We didn't tell them who Ibrahim was or that he was a scholarship student or his circumstances. That was very much up to Ibrahim if he wanted to share or not. But we did have to be a little bit careful about equity amongst all the students. It is a high stakes course. Students that pass this course can progress into their university studies. We were willing to do anything we possibly could to help Ibrahim, but we had to be careful that we were also willing to do that for other students, just as a point of fairness, really. And there was also the consideration that there is some group work required on our course. We didn't want any students to feel impacted, that their grades would be impacted if they were in a group with someone with loss of connectivity, etc. I don't think this was an issue. It happens every year with us. There's always students who lose connectivity or who don't turn up for the final presentation. It's not something that we can't get round. But if there is group work, it is a consideration that the other students may feel that their grades are impacted. I don't think anybody did. I think in this particular class, the students were very lucky to have Ibrahim. He ended up mentoring quite a lot of those students, and it was actually very lucky for them to have him in their group. And the last consideration was assessments, which this is the one that kept me awake at night. We have a lockdown browser for our assessments at Birmingham, so students log on to the exam using the lockdown browser that they install in their computer, which means they cannot access any other app on their laptop while they are doing the exam. If they do, or if they lose connectivity, they are immediately excluded from the exam, which was obviously a great possibility for Ibrahim. We also require students to enter the Zoom room with a second device with the camera on, so that we can watch them on screen doing the exam. We were very worried that Ibrahim would not have the connectivity or the ability to charge two devices to this extent. If he lost access during the exam, he would not be able to re-enter the exam when he got the Wi-Fi back. We were also very worried that the exam conditions that he was in would make the assessments not really a true reflection of his skills and his potential. And so we put some alternatives in place. We turned off all the exam security requirements, which we'll just skip over that. We also kept a folder which was kept securely, and only the tutors and I had access. But we kept a folder of a lot of examples of Ibrahim's work, of recordings, of tutorial records. I think one tutor even had made a recording with Ibrahim so that we could show the conditions going on behind him in which he was trying to study. And we were very, very willing to use this folder. If anything went wrong with the assessments, we would have gone to Queen's and said, look, this is who the student is. This is what they can do. In the end, we didn't need to, but it was there. We also asked RefugEAP, who I think there are a couple of people from RefugEAP here today, an absolutely amazing organisation. If they could help, they provided a voucher for Ibrahim. As he said, can't do IELTS in Gaza at the moment, but they gave him a voucher for an online level test, which, if push came to shove, then that might have been enough for Queen's as well. And we also were talking about doing our in-house level test, which we do at the BIA for the University of Birmingham. So our sanctuary scholars don't need to do IELTS tests. They can come to us, we test their level, and the university accepts our in-house level test. And we thought perhaps Queen's would as well if we needed it. So yes, conclusion number one, all of those assessments went without any problems. That was absolutely amazing. Ibrahim got far more than the grades that he actually needed. And yeah, we put those measures in place, but they weren't needed. And that was absolutely brilliant. And conclusion number two, as I said, the administrative work involved in this was really not great. There was a lot of tweaking, there was a lot of willingness, but there was nothing that couldn't be done. The coursework, I think it's important to support students through it. I'm not a fan of giving people a scholarship and then saying, okay, off you go now. I think students need support throughout the course. It doesn't finish with just giving them a free place. And I do think it's also a consideration to look after your teachers, choose them well, and look after them during the course. And the assessments, as I said, have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D and a plan E, just in case. We were lucky we didn't need it, but they were there if we needed them. And my conclusion number three is what's in it for the university? Well, Ibrahim wrote this amazing blog post, which absolutely delighted everyone in the BIA. I think Alex released that post very early one morning. By 11 o'clock in the morning, it had reached the Vice-Chancellor's desk. The whole of the university is absolutely delighted to be named and to be described in such positive terms by Ibrahim. So Ibrahim, thank you so much for that. It was a huge pleasure. It was a huge privilege, as I said, to have somebody like Ibrahim join us on the pre-sessional. And I hope it won't be needed again, but I hope we can be included in projects similar to this in the future.
Thank you so much, Alison. And thank you so much to the University of Birmingham as well for making that opportunity available. it was incredibly useful to get a kind of inside scoop on the practicalities of making that sort of thing work. And you've given us a lot of things to think about. So now I think look, we have Ibrahim back with us now. Hopefully, Ibrahim, hopefully your connection is a bit stronger now. So we're going to move straight over to Ibrahim before his connection goes again. Ibrahim, will it help you if we switch our cameras off? Would you like us to do that?
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay now.
Okay, we'll keep our cameras on for the time being, but if we feel that your connection is getting worse, then we might switch our cameras off as you're talking. Okay, so yeah, over to you, Ibrahim, and fingers crossed you keep your connection.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Actually, I was prepared to speak about the exactly same points that Alison talked about, and we're working together. Anyways, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ibrahim, but it is cutting out quite a lot. So I think if everybody could switch the cameras off. Ibrahim, you might also want to try switching your camera off. That might help.
Hello.
Hi, Ibrahim. Can you hear us? Ibrahim, can you hear us?
Okay.
We can hear
Yes.
you again now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes. Okay. I think we've lost him again. Okay. I think what we will do whilst we're waiting for Ibrahim to come back in, I think we can have maybe a short Q&A, like if anybody has any particular questions for Alison at this point. So yeah, please feel free to write any questions in the chat.
He's back again.
Oh, he's back. Okay, right. Let us meet.
Hello.
Ibrahim? We
Can you
can
hear
hear
me?
you. Yes, we can hear you. Okay, right. We're going to switch our videos off again. And yeah, okay. Hopefully you'll keep your connection.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I think that this connection was a perfect example of the challenge I wanted to share with you during the online course. I faced frequent interruptions due to electricity and internet issues, just like what happened now, and it made staying connected and focused a real struggle. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, I think it perfectly demonstrates some of these issues. I think we can hear you much better now.
Hello.
So I think if you want to carry on, Ibrahim, we can hear you okay now. Ibrahim, are you still there? Okay. Okay, looks like we've lost him again. Okay, yeah, I think it really does demonstrate some of these difficulties. I mean, I've met Ibrahim a couple of times before, and his internet connectivity was okay on those occasions, but it just goes to show that you just can't tell from day to day or from hour to hour what it's going to be like. Okay. I think in the meantime, if anybody does have any questions for Alison, you could pop them in the chat, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that Ibrahim will be able to rejoin us in a second.
Can I just say, Alex, and this wasn't how Ibrahim got through the whole course. So as Alex said, there are days where the internet connection is much better. I think that for example, in the assessments, we didn't have any problems at all. He managed the Wi-Fi kept going for the whole assessment. So I think it's it is an example of some of the issues that we had, but really please don't go away with the impression that this is what the course was like for him. There were whole lessons where he was managed to attend without these difficulties. But yes, it is a good example of anything can happen, that you have to be prepared for.
Yeah, and I think it demonstrates that kind of relying on the synchronous sessions alone is not enough, like, because this can happen. So it's good to have some sort of backup plan. So I suppose the backup plan for if Ibrahim isn't able to rejoin us and speak is we could direct people to his blog post, which I think covers most of what he was going to say. And I think Julie has popped the link to that in the chat. I think so. We have a couple of questions that have come in already in the chat. So I think we're just going to spend a couple of minutes going over these. So Agha has asked, is anyone here working with younger children? Okay, so Saida said yes. So they're going to connect later. Okay. Lucy has asked, how do you deal with topics which might seem light in comparison to what's going on, such as in-class discussion? Okay.
I think Ibrahim has mentioned, I think he mentioned in his blog that, or he's mentioned it to me, that connecting to the outside world was almost a break for him. So we didn't actually make too many adjustments to the materials or to the discussions. He was joining us in our very privileged world from where he was, and I think everybody on the course, everyone in his class, and certainly his teachers, and certainly me, we don't really address. We address what we're doing. We address the teaching. We address the learning. If Ibrahim would like to talk about anything else, obviously he can, but that is not our position to ask questions or to bring that up in conversation in a way that when you build a relationship with somebody, that might be something that could be talked about. But we very much kept the classes the same as they were, and Ibrahim was welcome to join us in those. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Alison. And I think this question also, we can come back to that at the end, because I think Saida and Yvonne are likely to have some kind of additional insights based on their research as well. So thanks, Alison. So I think at this point then, I think we're going to move on to Yvonne's presentation, or Yvonne's talk. So we're going to hear from Yvonne, who's going to focus on the EAP perspective of providing EAP to students who are currently in fragile contexts. And after that, we will move over to Saida, who's going to talk about distance learning in crisis context, in the Gazan crisis context. So Yvonne is coming at it from an EAP perspective. And so we're going to start with Yvonne. Yvonne, over to you.
Thanks, Alex. So my name's Yvonne. I've worked in English language teaching and EAP for over 25 years, but most of my experience is a bit different. I've worked a lot on British Council programmes overseas, and most recently with the Institute of Ismaili Studies, and they haven't been typical pre-sessionals, so very EAP based, but a little bit different from what Alison was talking about. My experience comes, unfortunately, not directly with students from Palestine, but I've worked with underprivileged Egyptians at An-Najah University, preparing for UK study, Syrian teachers and undergraduates in refugee camps in Jordan, heads of English departments at universities across Libya, and helping or supporting them with EAP provision. And most recently, I've worked at the Institute of Ismaili Studies with Afghans, Iranians, Syrians, and Tajiks hoping to study in London. So, as I said, a slightly different background and slightly different courses, but I'll definitely be echoing some of Ibrahim's and Alison's points. So my experience and research have highlighted an increasing need for understanding these students' and teachers' unique situations. And also what my research highlights is the non-academic factors can sometimes be neglected when programmes are designed and implemented, and this can sometimes cause additional stress to students who are already in difficult situations. So I'm going to talk about academic and non-academic factors in my talk, because I think they're both extremely important. So first of all, the academic factors. I'm going to keep coming back to this, but I think it's absolutely crucial to have an understanding of students' educational backgrounds, including higher education in students' contexts when designing programmes. Of course, that's much easier for single nationality groups, which I've worked with a lot more than perhaps people working on pre-sessionals have done. I think it's also vital to have an awareness of the differences within the same country. Examples from my experience are government and non-government controlled areas in Syria are very different. More rural areas in Afghanistan have very, very unique challenges. And West and East Tajikistan differ very, very much, considerable differences. So just a few examples, which I think might be particularly relevant for everybody working in challenging contexts. First of all is the quality of English language provision in some of these countries, and students starting from maybe with lower levels than other students. So yeah, lower language skills, maybe due to school, college, university, and also a lack of private language courses where they live. We've provided much longer preparatory programmes. That was the case at Al-Azhar University in Egypt, and the Institute of Ismaili Studies. We're able to provide programmes for a year, very much part-time courses, not full-time for a year, but part-time courses that gives students that sort of grounding in general English and then building the academic skills on top of that. I do realise that's quite exceptional, though. I'd like to talk about academic culture shock, as it's termed in some of the literature. Very different academic standards in the UK to some education, for college education, higher education in some countries. We've tried to mimic what students might expect in the UK with some of our preparatory programmes. So examples are including longer and more complex readings and writing assignments. We've had a read to write module where both of those skills are combined, which isn't the case in some of the international exams like IELTS, so to give them a more realistic experience and to know what to expect in the UK. Another point that I think is really important is that many students are used to teacher-centred approaches. This also might fit in with the idea of an academic culture shock. Many students, in my experience, struggle with being reflective and using critical thinking skills. And there's also, in my experience, is sometimes a lack of world knowledge. My Iranian students and also my research has highlighted that in Iran there was a ban on international publishers for a long time, and a purification, if you like, in further and higher education. And so students are just used to practicing with texts that are published locally. And I think this puts them at a disadvantage when they're doing Western exams like IELTS. So part of the preparation programs that I was working on most recently, a lot of the preparation for class was done by the students before, so listening to a recording or reading an article or another kind of text, and class time was devoted to discussion to get them thinking, listening to each other, responding critically. We included modules called global issues, which kind of speaks for itself, but different issues from different countries, asking students to compare with their own contexts. And we've also included a book club, which was something most students hadn't done anything like that before. They hadn't read a novel in English, and it really built up their confidence. We chose The Reluctant Fundamentalist because, students would be able to understand some of the background of that, but also discuss sort of on a more global perspective some of those issues. My next point was the lack of resources, which I think is something that everybody's really aware of. So equipment, poor digital skills, limited hours of electricity, only 2 hours a day in Syria. So that has huge implications for planning classes. Poor internet connections, as we've seen today, is something really common. Something in my last post, we were able to get a lot of support from Ismaili partners locally, but again, this isn't always available, but it was invaluable to some of our students who could go and study at offices with good internet connections. But as we've discussed today already, cameras off, allowing students to use mobile phones, less synchronous, more asynchronous modules. We've worked on digital skills as part of classwork. So actually entering a Moodle site and encouraging students to use that and reply to posts while we're actually in class. PDF course books instead of digital ones have made a difference. We've experimented with different platforms. Zoom just doesn't work in Iran, for example. Those students have much more success with Google Meet. The next point I'd like to talk about regarding the academic considerations is the need to practice all skills, and listening being the biggest challenge there when teaching students with low bandwidth. As I already mentioned, we've encouraged students to listen or read before class so they can do it in their own time. We've used Moodle a lot and had a bank of audio files there so that students can access as many as they want when it suits them. I just want to reinforce my point before about a comprehensive understanding of students' situations and tailoring them to meet these students' needs. Just an example, we got partway through a course and one of the students had to get a job, which changed everything, and we had to make different allowances, so more asynchronous materials, flexible deadlines, that kind of thing. As I said at the beginning, my research has also highlighted the non-academic factors, which I think may be sometimes neglected in favour of the academic ones. I've read a lot and researched a lot into trauma-informed pedagogy and the theory of do no harm. Again, a clear understanding of students' contexts and situations on longer term projects, effective risk assessments and needs analysis. As Alison mentioned in her talk, the importance of some specialised teacher training and support for teachers on, how to support the students, but how to manage some of these situations themselves. And also, where possible, some sort of sustainability and continuing support for students after their courses. If students have been with us for about a year and maybe they haven't been successful, just to continue to engage with them and work with them in some way. I'd like to talk about resilience and language to promote resilience. There's the academic side of resilience, so how language can provide access to education and employment. But I think the significance of emotional resilience should be highlighted, and how, I don't want to generalise at all, but in my experience, sometimes dealing with trauma through teaching, combining some kind of psychosocial support. Some of my students have felt empowered through English, and they can talk about their situations and their circumstances using a common language. I've had groups of Afghans and Syrians and Iranians, and once they're comfortable with each other, they really want to talk about what's happening in their contexts. And they've told me they found it helpful to share what's happening. I'd like to talk about motivation and engagement very briefly. I'm just looking at the time. I found students in some of the contexts I've worked in just incredibly motivated. And I've never seen that as a problem at all. But I think it's the engagement that can sometimes fluctuate. It's more observable, and I think as teachers we can monitor that closely. And it's particularly important for online learning. Some of the issues that I've already talked about with internet connectivity and local situations, I think can affect engagement. So I think we've offered more regular tutorials just to check in with students, that I think is really helpful. Flexible deadlines, allowances for weak internet connectivity, and extra support with digital literacy. My final point was just to talk about community and identity, and this was a really big thing with the groups I worked with of Ismaili students, so from different countries, but they did have a sort of a common community feeling. But I think this is important for all groups. A lot of students are isolated at home. They're not in a real classroom. I felt this particularly with some Afghan women who couldn't really go out and were stuck at home. And I think this sense of community and building a community was really, really beneficial for them. So some things that we did were prioritising class activities that can promote community and connections, so learner-centred approaches, communicative activities, collaborative tasks and group projects. Students joined WhatsApp groups without their teachers, which I think also help to build resilience. That's it for me, Alex. Very happy to answer any questions or discuss more.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Yvonne. That's given us lots of things to think about. The things that you were saying about flexibility and having additional one-to-one support, and allowing for weak internet. A lot of that stuff resonated with what Alison had mentioned before about some of the tweaks that she'd made for Ibrahim. Thank you so much for that. I've put the link to your chapter in the chat as well. And so now I think we will move on to Saida, and then we can do questions, like general questions at the end, for all of the speakers. I think Saida is going to pick up on some of the things that you were talking about, Yvonne, as well. So introducing our final speaker then. Professor Saida Affouneh from An-Najah National University in Nablus in the West Bank. And she has been spearheading initiatives to support Gazan students through distance learning. So I will pass over to you, Saida.
Thank you very much, Alex. Hello, everybody. And I really enjoyed what Alison and Yvonne said. And also I read about what Ibrahim, his post about his beautiful experience, which represent really the situation in Gaza. And the most important thing about the experience, it's to give you an idea. Ibrahim is a good example about the idea of how Palestinians are motivated to continue their learning, which is, I'll start by saying 4 main things about Palestinian. I'm talking to you from inside Palestine. So I would like to let you feel the spirit of being a Palestinian. So I'll talk about 4 facts. The first thing, which Ibrahim showed us, that we value our education and we want to learn, we want to continue our education despite of any circumstances that around us, even if it is like what's going now on, which is impossible to talk about it, impossible to live inside it, impossible to think about education. So I think of changing Maslow and also the needs, because we put education as one of our priorities as a Palestinian. This is one thing. The other thing that we are searching for peace. And we think learning English is part of sending a message for the world that we love peace. We want to live in peace. And we are trying through different ways to reach peace. So English is one of our tools to speak to the world and to send our message of how much we love our life and we want to live like everybody like you in peace. And we hope that it will continue for everybody around the world. The third one is about, we have developed, the third message, that we have developed our own strategies of resilience. And you will be surprised when I'm going to say that we don't usually admit that we are traumatized or we are in hard situation. And we hate the word of talking about challenges, difficulties, trauma. We hate all these words. We love to be considered as normal people who are enjoying their life and trying to have a normal life. This will take us, this is just to put you on the context of Palestinians. This is why I said that in order to encourage you to consider more Palestinians, more students in your higher education institutions. But that will be with several standards and guidelines in order to make your institution function normally. And at the same time, the students who are coming from Palestine and especially from Gaza can learn in a better way. I would like to thank Alex because she encouraged me to develop guidelines when we at An-Najah National University initiate TC as an initiative to support higher education. I developed with my colleague a model for how to do trauma-informed teaching with online, offline learning, how to connect the two solutions together, pedagogy as a trauma-informed teaching and technology as online, offline model together. And Alex encouraged me to write them down. So I have developed the guidelines that we will share in a minute. I'm going, much of my presentation, many of it have been, I think my colleagues have went through many of the information, but I will move on to talk about why we should learn English, which is it's very important for us. The most important when I talk about it is about sending our message of peace to the world, so we have the common language, and then in order to empower ourselves, in order to for career development, for academic advancement. And one of the things that I heard from my colleagues at Gaza University is that even if they want to apply for like Scholars at Risk or CAR institutions, even if they want to go for a fellowship, many of them, they suffer from lack of having the language. So I hope that this also will be open for other colleagues, not only students and also colleagues who are scholars. I think also it's good to have it, the English language is the world globe language, so we want to be able to communicate with all of you. And the final one, which is very important, is to share our stories, to share, to document, to talk about our narratives, to let the people listen to our stories, because it's not that maybe the media will share our stories. No, we want you to hear it from our side. And being, when we have the master on English, then you can hear it from our hearts, from our own narrative. So it will be a bit different. The other thing is about, I'll try to make it, to share it. Just 1 minute. So I'm not going, because Alex has also shed some light on the current situation in Palestine and in Gaza especially, and about the ecocide. And I think all of you know the situation, so I will not talk much about it, but I want to say that there is a big problem, limited internet and also electricity and power outages and lack of device accessibility for psychological challenges, trauma, stress, and everybody has lost some of his members, family. Before 3 days, there was more than the whole family has gone in one of the areas. So, but as I said, we don't recognize it. Either we don't recognize this trauma or we don't want to talk about it because we feel that this is against our resilience and our asking for freedom. I talked about high motivation for learning, and the most important thing that when we talk about education in the current circumstances, we should talk about learning for hope. We should talk about the pedagogy of hope. So this is the third item. So we are talking about trauma-informed teaching. We are talking about learning and offline, online and offline learning. And the third one is the learning for hope, the pedagogy of hope. Connecting these three together will move us to the following guidelines. So this took us to develop the guidelines for educators in a crisis situation. And I would like to thank Alex, Helen, and Vanus for supporting this to be done in this way. It is now done in 2 languages, and it will be done in the 3rd language soon. It will be published. Just to shed some light about the terminology, what about crisis education, why, when, and where? I think you are all familiar with that, but I want to say that these guidelines have been developed in the context of Palestine and could be implemented for other contexts, even when we are talking about natural crisis or any kind of a crisis. And we maybe in the future we can, we hope there will be no crisis, but this is life. we can test them. So we are talking about schools and higher education, and now we are testing them with schools in Gaza. The most important thing about these guidelines are the word flexibility. And I think Yvonne and Alison talked about that. So the word flexibility is the key word. So we can't say that the rules in our university is to do this. The regulation is to do this. No, we need to be very flexible because we are talking about a crisis situation. We are talking about a changeable. We are not talking about reconstruction. We are not in the state of reconstruction. We are still in the crisis. So when we are still in the crisis, everything is changeable. So every day is different. So Ibrahim today was unable to connect. Yesterday he was able to connect. Maybe tomorrow he will be able to connect, maybe not. We don't know. It depends on the circumstances around him. This guidelines or model depends on 5 main concepts: the pedagogy, the technology, the psychological support or trauma, the curriculum itself, and the teacher training. And each one of them, it has subtitles and categories that could be, I will give now just two examples about what each one contains. So we need, when we want to talk about technology, what type of technology, what is our expectation about the technology, we need to be aware that it is low bandwidth. Maybe today there is technology, tomorrow there isn't. There is no internet, maybe there is no computer. All these circumstances, the same as the pedagogy, we are talking about trauma-informed pedagogy, and we are talking about also the pedagogy of hope. The same, I will go through one example. But first of all, I have these general remarks. Please consider, and my colleague Alison and Yvonne talked about them. We are talking about student-centered design or approach. So each student has her own circumstances. So what works for Ibrahim may not work for Ali, may not work for Sarah. So we need to design the learning according to each student. We need to focus on resilience and flexibility, offline content availability. So because I think like 90% there is no internet. It comes and goes just for a few hours, and it needs a lot of, it's very expensive for them to be online. And if it does exist, we are talking about low bandwidth platforms and mobile friendly resources. I think Yvonne talked about interactive PDFs and offline compatible exercises when we are talking about assessment. And at the same time, we are talking about everything should be downloadable and printable resources. I will give 2 examples with detailed, I will go to details just to give an example. So one of the main issue about methodology, be present to your students. So have your camera live and encourage them to do so, but don't expect them to do so because with low bandwidth, they can't open their camera, but encourage them. Write a welcoming message to students. We want to make it more personalized, the learning to be more personalized. We need to introduce ourselves, explain how we will work together. The last 7 months, we were teaching more than 5,000 students from Gaza at An-Najah, and we have a lot of volunteers around the world. And these were very helpful guidelines to them in order to personalize the learning experience and to make it more social. Relate to students with encouragement and empathy. This is very important, but we need to be aware not to go to the political situation. We need to make the balance between being empathy, but not being involved. So we don't need to be involved in order to concentrate on the learning itself, but not the political situation. Employ thoughtful interaction, such as questions, reflections, I will give one example. When I was teaching those some of the students, and I keep all the time mentioning their names, even if they don't exist in the live session. And one of the students, she came back to me and she sent me a text and she said, "Thank you very much. You let me feel that I were there." And she was very happy. She said, "This is very kind of you that you did that." But it was not very kind. It was my responsibility and my duty to talk to her, because I know that later on she will hear the records. So we need, maybe this is strange, but it's very important, because we want them to feel that this is real live teaching, and we want them to feel that we do care. We know your names, we know your circumstances, so they will feel the care and the empathy. Give details how to contact you about your information. Otherwise, I tell you, we are very demanding. Palestinian people are very demanding. We will keep either texting you or emailing you, because you know, the people who are traumatized, they want everything to be done. They feel scared, they insecure, and they will fight to get their rights, even in education. So, if you make it clear, please contact me from this time to this time, I will respond on that. Give me 24 hours to respond. Make it clear, simple, then we will respect that. And this is maybe also, some people will find it strange. When you are online, keep your background neutral. Don't show luxury life, because they are in the tents. They are in need of everything. So please, this is one thing that I wrote about, because I know it, I felt it, I lived in it. Don't eat, don't drink, don't show luxury life. Put a sign of, like you did today, you are wearing the scarf, kufiya, so you are showing, showing a kind of care and solidarity. So don't show differences, because they need more care. Avoid blaming students if they don't attend. I was telling many of the people who I train them, please don't blame them. They can't do it. Just they will do it if they can. This is one example, and I will show another example, and then maybe I'll go to more general issues. This is about pedagogy, trauma-informed teaching. Remember that all of us know that trauma will affect the ability and the motivation. I tell you that for Palestinian, no, the motivation is very high, but it will not go like this all the time. So today I will be very motivated in a very high, because all of them register to learn, but maybe tomorrow I will not be. It depends on my mood, on the circumstances. I remember one of the students, she told me while she was in the class that she was in the class, she finished it. Then later on, after 1 minute, I think she lost 3 of her family, 3 members of her family. So the next, she did not show up. She was the only one who showed up in my class. She did not show up for maybe 3 weeks. When I sent her messages, she said that she lost some of her family. So even that we are very motivated, but sometimes it will go upon the circumstances. This is very important one. Expect unexpected reactions. So sometimes they will cry, sometimes they will be very sad, sometimes they will be, so there is a lot of different emotions that you may face, you may feel, and you need to know how to react to that. The first thing is to accept it, to expect it. Then you know how to deal with that. We need to be aware about the words we use and how we come across to our students. We need to introduce a lot of group praying, deep breathing, simple mindfulness exercise, even if they are not exist. When I was training my colleague about that, they said, but there is nobody to ask them to do group praying or deep breathing. I say, mention it, practice it, and let them do it when they are in their tents or shelters. At least tell them about it. Just take few minutes. You don't need to take the whole class, just a few minutes. Give positive coping strategies all the time, so they encourage to use it, and then you are train them to support their families, other member of their families. If you look at this, you will look all the time to feel that it's like a pedagogy of hope, to rebuild hope. And here I'm talking about education for rebuilding hope. It's not only to get master degree or PhD. It's very important, but through that, what is the most important, to give him the confidence that he is living in a kind of normal life. He can continue. There is somebody who cares about him or her. I'm not going to go through this because I think my colleagues have covered that. So I just go very quickly on that. And then I'll present the guidelines in 1 minute so you can go through it. In conclusion, the most important thing is flexible learning materials. Make it possible students to access consistent quality English regardless of connectivity limitation. When we design the material, we need to think about the three main issues: online, offline, and their restrictions. And we need to train teachers how to do that, because it's not normal use. As Alison said, we need to design it in a different way. The second thing that we need to be sure that the students need psychological support. It's not our role to do that, but we will support them in a different way. And the third one, the third important one is about rebuilding education for rebuilding hope. So creating a new channel for hope is our main aim for now. I will go for the guidelines in order to show you in general. Do I still have time? Yeah, thank you. So these are, I will go very quickly. I'll not take much time. So these are the guidelines. We talked about the 5 themes: the pedagogy, and I gave one example, how to build community and trust, and low bandwidth teaching. What does it mean? How to solve that problem? What are the strategies? These are tips and with examples, how to deal with low bandwidth teaching, building resilience through teaching, how to support them. So each one is related to one of the 3 main issues. When we talk about technology, what type of technology? I need to learn about them. As Yvonne said, that we need to learn and do need assessment about the students. So what goes with Iran does not go with Palestine, does not go with the maybe Syrian students. So we need to learn more about the students themselves. And then we are talking about curriculum and psychological support, trauma-informed teaching, and teacher development. So I don't think that every teacher can do the same if he is not trained. So not all teachers can do that, especially when we are talking about dealing with the traumatized students and with unexpected things that goes in. So we need to be aware who will choose, and we need to train them and let them know what is needed for them. I would like to thank you for arranging for this, Alex. And at the same time, I'll see that I will end by saying that we really need your support. We are searching and trying to live just in peace. English will be one of our tools. Technology is one of our tools, and we will together live. We should all live have a good life. So thank you for supporting Palestinians. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Saida. I think those guidelines are going to be invaluable over the coming months and years for everybody who's trying to put together some sort of online provision for Palestinian students. And I think there's lots to kind of to unpick in all of that. I think some of those guidelines can be applied if there's, for example, a single Palestinian student in a class of other students in a mixed class, but then there's some guidelines which seem like they might work better if there's a whole class of Palestinian students. And I think all of us here are coming from different contexts, and we might well be in different situations like that. So yeah, I think there's a lot there for us to think about. Yeah, and so I have put the link to that document in the chat. So basically, so Saida's document, if you have LinkedIn, then you can access a version of that document through Saida's LinkedIn post. If you don't have LinkedIn, then I can see with Saida whether I could just send the Word version of the document or a PDF in the follow-up email after this session. And I think also I'm going to ask all of the speakers who have PowerPoint slides. I'll just check with you whether you're okay for me to share those slides as well, like in the follow-up email, in case anyone missed anything. And so we can all kind of spend a bit more time looking at all of those points. There's so much to take in. Oh, okay, Saida, you've already put the guidelines in the chat. Thank you. That's brilliant. Okay, so we have about half an hour left. So we would like to spend the remaining time kind of just opening up the floor to questions, really. So as you know, everyone is muted, but if you could put any questions in the chat, then we can tackle those as they come in. Now, I don't know if anybody's already put questions in the chat, which I might have missed. Let me just scroll up. So we've already had people sharing information about different projects and different resources which are supporting different levels of education in Gaza. Some of them are aimed at children. So yeah, thank you for sharing those things. So yeah, if anybody does have any further questions, then please feel free to pop those in the chat. I think we do have a question from earlier from Aga about does anyone have experience designing stories for children with learnings and lessons embedded within them? My team and I are creating a storybook for children with prosthetics or amputations to help them cope and to learn medical terminology through discussions that the characters have. So yeah, so Katie mentioned the Hands Up project, which is a fantastic project which is run by a guy called Nick Bilborough based in the UK, and he links up volunteer teachers with children in Gaza, and they do remote theatre and storytelling to help the children feel kind of less isolated, to link them up with people from around the world, and to help improve their English. So we can share that link in the follow-up email as well. So yeah, does anyone have anything that you'd like to add to that? So about experience of designing stories for children. Okay, so I don't think anybody has anything to add to that one. But if anyone does have anything more to share on that topic, then please just pop that in the chat. Okay, so Saida, we have a question that's come in from Alison. So Saida, do you feel like universities in the UK could do more? And what would you like to see them do in an ideal world?
Yes, I think I appreciate what you are all doing, but I think much more could be done in order to, in the training, and there is more than for higher education, there is around 100,000 students, and for schools, there is more than 600,000 students. All of them lost their right for education. They are now partially enrolled, but we can still do very much in order to support their learning and their right for education. One example is by sharing open resources, which is, as you said earlier, it's easy, very easy, because it's just sharing the material. The second thing is by giving more scholarship, but not to make it very complicated with a lot of conditions. The condition could be later. Maybe they can take, like bringing all the papers, documents. They can't bring documents because they lost it. So there should be more flexibility. And at the same time, we can do a lot of psychological support by producing some material which is related, either through games, either through reading material, or by tips for parents in order to do that. I think for higher education also, which is very important, more research should be done in order to document the best practice and the circumstances. I can give one example, if Alex allowed me, that there is a lot of, I'm trying to look at the beautiful side of what's going on. So it's not to make it beautiful, but this is what I have noticed as an educational expert, that many students, we have been trying all our life to improve problem-solving skills at schools. But now we have seen that the problem-solving skills have appeared in Gaza, because many of the children, they try to solve very simple problems around them, just as cleaning the water, in a very simple way. So we need to write about those ways. It's a new methodology, if you like to look at it in this way. It's a new methodology of innovation and creativity in learning through contexts in a crisis situation. Since little children are now have their own resilience way, they try to solve their problems, they try to support their families in a wonderful way. I tell you, I'm trying to document that, but at the same time, despite of all the pain, they are trying to find their ways. So I think higher education institutions need at least to document what's going on from the bright side and from the pain side. And this is, this is very important for the future, because we don't know how things are going. We need to learn from the experience of what's going on in Palestine. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Saida. And actually, just to follow on from what you mentioned about problem-solving skills, actually, the last refugee network meetup that we had, I think it was back in April or May, we had an academic called Dr. Bill Guariento at the University of Northumbria, and he came along to talk about a tele-collaboration project that he had been co-running between the University of Glasgow and the Islamic University of Gaza, whereby pre-sessional students on engineering, pre-sessional engineering students at the University of Glasgow linked up with students at the Islamic University of Gaza to work together to solve real-world problems which were facing Gaza at that time. So that's one example of how a university and actually a pre-sessional program could be kind of adapted to try to work on some of those problem-solving skills. So that's focusing on university level students. But perhaps something similar could be done with school age students as well, like you mentioned, Saida. Yeah, thank you. And I think I just saw Ibrahim try to rejoin us, but I think his connection must have fallen again. And actually, I've seen that he has sent an email just to say that he was so sorry that he wasn't able to kind of to connect properly today to be able to share his experiences. Yeah, I will see with him afterwards whether he might be in a position to maybe record a piece of what he was going to say, and we can share that with you all afterwards, if that's possible. Okay, so we have a question here from Lucy, who is asking, if access to a pre-sessional course is not possible, what can we do to support people who are learning in Gaza right now? Could we support asynchronously by marking work or giving feedback or something else? I mean, I have a partial answer to this question, and then perhaps others have also got answers. So I know that there's an organisation which is called ELT Professionals for Palestine that has been organising one-to-one English tuition for students based in Gaza. And so some of that is general English, some of it is academic English, depending on what the student needs. They are, well, the last time I heard, they were looking for volunteers. So again, I can put information about that in the follow-up email if anybody is interested in getting involved in that way. Does anyone else have any ideas about perhaps asynchronous ways in which people could get involved? I think what I will do at this point is I'm going to just let people unmute themselves in case anybody would like to say something. But in the meantime, Saida.
Yes, I think there is different way to volunteer to teach in university, either in the West Bank who are supporting Gaza students, or in university themselves who were able to connect again at Gaza. Like today, Al-Aqsa University has announced that they need volunteers. I will send for Alex the calls, and they can complete forms in order to volunteer to teach for Gaza students. So there is solidarity for Palestine through they announced that, and An-Najah National University also through TC. There is a lot of people can volunteer there. So I will share with Alex, and she can send it through an email.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Saida. Did anyone else have any information you might like to share on that? Okay. So I think we'll move on to the next question from Jonathan. How do you think that supporting students to develop positive study skills might differ for those in challenging contexts? So, maybe Saida or Yvonne?
Which question, please, again, Alex?
So question from Jonathan. So how do you think that supporting students to develop positive study skills might differ for those in challenging contexts?
Positive skills, you mean?
Yeah, so study skills. So would you make any changes to the advice that you give to a student who's studying in Gaza to students who are studying in other circumstances?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of differences now of how to study while for students in Gaza. The expectation that I think there for time, it should be very, very open. Like when we are talking about assignments or expectation of time schedule, it should be very open because we don't know when they will be able to do it. You don't expect them to be live The third thing that their emotion could be different from time to time. I can give one real example that we did the examination in 3 different time slots. And some of them, the number of dropout was very high. They registered, but they were not able. And even we lost some of them, either by dropping out or by they lost their lives. So it is very different. This is why we developed the guidelines in order to connect it to the circumstances in Gaza. So these students, they need different way of caring and learning. So it's the pedagogy of hope and trauma informed teaching in order to be able to deal with them.
Thanks, Saida. So it seems like we're encouraging students to plan, like when it comes to kind of planning their study, planning when to join sessions, when to take exams. So we need some planning, but then we need to have some flexibility and openness when it comes to that, because as we saw today with Ibrahim, sometimes the connectivity just doesn't allow that plan to happen. So a plan, but flexibility, and maybe just kind of getting people to not expect things to go according to plan. Kind of just having that expectation that things might go wrong, but it's okay. There will always be some sort of plan B for them. And I guess so, if they know that, oh, sorry, Alison, if they know that, that the teachers are understanding about those limitations that they're working under, that takes a lot of the stress away from them, I think, as well. Sorry, Alison, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to comment on what Saida said about people who signing up for a course and then not being able to do it. And I think from working with asylum seekers and refugees, I found that people will find their right moment for it. And there's no point in forcing people and saying, what you need to do is sign up for this course. I think people will find their moment, and it might not be now, but given time, I think, there's no harm in signing up for a course and then finding that actually you're not in that moment yet. And I don't think we'd attach any blame to that either.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Alison. Okay. So there's another question that's come in from Emily about the example of linking up, like how we linked Ibrahim with Alison and the University of Birmingham. So it sounds great, but it's quite ad hoc. Normally, how would a displaced person living in a camp get to hear of a place on an online pre-sessional? Does it depend on them applying to universities and the university offering an undergraduate or postgraduate program, putting them in touch with a pre-sessional? Yeah, that is a very good question, Emily. Yeah, so it was rather ad hoc. So yeah, basically, as part of the RefugEAP network, I was kind of trying to, before the summer pre-sessionals all started, I was kind of scrabbling around trying to find a way to link people up. And so I had some kind of informal networks of people who knew students in Gaza who needed pre-sessionals, and put out a call on various mailing lists for universities who might be willing to kind of offer online places. So yes, it was very ad hoc and unsustainable to do it in that way. So what I am looking to do through the RefugEAP network is to kind of put together a better, more sustainable model for how to do that, how to link up practically students in Gaza or from Gaza who need pre-sessionals with opportunities. Yeah, and I'm kind of looking for people to help, basically, because it was a lot for one person to try and do, and yeah, and I just wasn't able to sustain it. So if there is anyone who's kind of interested in being part of a little kind of working group to work out the best way to do that and to try and operationalize that, then please let me know. Maybe Saida or Alison or Yvonne or maybe anyone else might know of other models of practice when it comes to that?
It's going back a few years, but when I was working at the Syrian refugee camps in Jordan, all of the well, not all, but the NGOs, some of the NGOs would have education officers, and they would support students. They would see if there was a particular scholarship or a particularly good student and try and support them in that way. And it was also something the British Council used to do. But, yeah.
Okay, British Council. So education officers and the British Council as well. Okay.
We worked with the Norwegian Refugee Council and Relief International and those kind of organisations.
Okay. So yeah, so reaching out to NGOs, and also I think I saw Anya in the chat. I think you mentioned the emergency committee of Gaza universities. So that's for anyone who's not who hasn't come across that before. So that is basically a kind of coalition of Gazan universities who have come together to set out some priorities for how they would like to rebuild Gazan education. And so this is like quite it's an unprecedented call and a kind of show of unity between these universities who are kind of worried about some attempts, especially coming from other countries where people are kind of trying to make decisions about what to do with Gazan education without consulting the educators and the universities themselves. And so, yeah, so that is a body which it's just kind of in the process of establishing itself at the moment. But they may also have links to students who need pre-sessionals. So that's another avenue that we could look into. Okay, I think Saida?
Yeah, I think there's different ways of announcing for that. If there's anybody wants to support some of the students, either course could be announced, so it is not done for individual. I prefer that it could be done for more than one person, and to be separated from other students in the beginning, and then maybe they can collaborate with others. There is a community networks that is done in Gaza. There is some learning hubs that we can send the announcement for, which is connected to internet also. And at the same time, the Ministry of Higher Education, there is a committee consists of all representatives from all higher education in Palestine, all university. So we can, if there's any announcement, we could share it.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much, Saida. What I will attempt to do after this webinar is I'm going to rewatch it, and I'm going to go through and try and pick out all of these points and all of these resources and that have come up in the chat and in our discussion as well, and try and share that in an email because I don't want us to lose any of these ideas. Okay, thanks, Saida. So Amelia in the chat asked whether there are a list of organisations which individual volunteer tutors can connect with. So yeah, I think we've mentioned a few of those organisations, but we will try to compile some of these for the follow-up email so that they're all in one place. So Hannah mentioned concerning designing children's books. Okay. Oh, thanks, Hannah. That's an offer to help with that. Okay, and yeah, thanks, Anya, for pointing us towards the emergency committee. And then, okay, so
the Amelia idea.
Amelia's idea. Saida, do you mean the one about volunteering?
Designing courses like correspondence courses, sending weekly low data, use Word documents, things like this. I think.
Yes, yeah. What do you think about that idea, Saida?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea that and we can announce it for students, but we need to design it first. Yeah, it could be a good idea for students. Bringing students back to education could be a kind of normalize their life, which has not only just for learning, but also for normalization of their life. It could be a psychological support indirectly.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of research done on how kind of having access to education can help people have a sense of belonging and a sense of hope and purpose. Yeah. Okay. Did anyone else want to mention anything about the correspondence courses, this idea? I think we have a few more things which have come in. Well, the chat is a hive of activity at the moment. So we have a suggestion from Aga asking Saida, are you collaborating or familiar with Sumud, Isra, Othman and team?
No, I don't know them. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Aga, if you have any more information about that, if you could pop it in the chat or perhaps share it with Saida afterwards, that would be wonderful. So we have a message from Sarah about an organisation called Fighting Words, who facilitate storytelling with young people. Okay, so Aga has asked, is there a Slack or a WhatsApp or another group for this network? I would love to stay in touch. So Aga, there is a WhatsApp group. So there's an organisation called University and College Workers for Palestine. And as part of, but that's basically a network of people, some people who belong to unions, but some people who don't belong to unions, and also some students as well. Working or studying in the UK higher education or further education sector, and also there are some people from outside the UK as well. So it's people who are interested in the area of education and what we can do to help. And there is a subgroup as part of that which focuses on sanctuary initiatives for Palestinian students, academics, and higher education institutions. So you could join that if you want to, and I will in this follow-up email, which is going to be very, very long, I think, I will share the link so that you can join that WhatsApp group if you want to. I know that some people who are in this meeting are already in that group as well. So thank you very much. I've had a few messages in the chat saying people are interested in volunteering to help with putting together a way of connecting Palestinian students with EAP. So thank you very much. Okay, let's see, any more messages? Okay, so Aga has mentioned that there's a lot of students who've been supported by Al-Khidmat Foundation and the government of Pakistan to bring medical students from Gaza and the West Bank to Pakistan to continue education. Yeah, there are. I'm aware of some of these initiatives as well to help medical students. At my university, I have a fantastic colleague who's been able to put together an initiative to have international medical students at risk, including from Gaza, to come over in the middle of their medical studies and kind of pick up where they left off. And they come as visiting students, which means that they will still get their degrees from their original universities. And in the case of Gaza, this is seen as kind of being kind of best practice, so that those universities themselves don't become erased. So there's lots of good initiatives going on with medics. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so a message from Sarah. So as teachers, we probably all have many EAP materials we've written for our classes. Maybe we could use these to produce a course. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Anya, for putting the link to University and College Workers for Palestine. Okay. Yeah, more information about the medical electives. Yeah. Again, that's going to come in this promised follow-up email. I'll share more information about that. Okay. So we have a few minutes left. Does anyone have any kind of final questions or any final comments that you might like to make? I have now changed the settings so people can unmute themselves if they would like to. Yeah, and thank you very much for all of your kind of engagement with this topic, which is a really important topic. And, you know, there are kind of pockets of activity like across the sector. Different people are kind of talking about what we can do to support Gazan education, but it's all, yeah, there are many challenges. But I think hopefully sessions like this, where we're focusing on how to overcome these challenges, hopefully will help us put something concrete together. And yeah, thank you very much for everyone for your interest in potentially you know, helping out with a working group to find a way to link up students who need EAP with opportunities. I'll put more information about that and how you can volunteer to take part in that if you'd like to in this follow-up email. It's going to be really, really long. Okay, would anyone like, anyone has any final questions or comments? Because if not, then I would just like to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers who have kind of, you know, shared their insights on this really important topic. I think it was really interesting to see the resonances between what you were saying. There were some really key important themes which came out. And I think that's going to help a lot of people. And yeah, I just wanted to end by saying a huge thank you to Ibrahim as well. And yeah, we're really sorry that that your internet connection wasn't playing ball today. But we're glad you were able to join us for some of this. And I think you'll be able to catch up with this session via the recording. And yeah, Lucy, yeah, we will send your thanks to Ibrahim.
Thank you, Alex, for bringing us all together. It's really, really good to work with you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex. And
Yeah.
thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful.
And let's continue this conversation. And I'm going to go off and write that long email now.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Take care.